Most of all, they thought my 7-year-old son, Daniel, didn't have much of a future. My name is Clara Thompson. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, people believed they knew exactly who I was. To my relatives, I was the quiet younger sister who never reached her potential. The single mother who lived in a small apartment. The woman who wore inexpensive clothes, drove an old sedan, and worked a mysterious, consulting job that nobody respected. They thought I was struggling. They thought I needed their pity. Most of all, they thought my 7-year-old son, Daniel, didn't have much of a future. What they never realized was that I had spent the last 5 years building a life so different from the one they imagined that, when the truth finally came out, it would destroy everything they believed about me. But before that happened, they humiliated my little boy over something as simple as a hamburger. And that was the biggest mistake they would ever make. It was the 4th of July weekend, and my parents had organized one of their famous family barbecues. Every year the entire family gathered at their beautiful suburban home, just outside Chicago. The backyard looked like something from a magazine. Freshly cut grass, colorful flowers, expensive patio furniture, an enormous grill sitting in the middle of everything like it was the stage for the day's performance. And standing behind that grill, of course, was my older brother Marcus. Marcus loved being the center of attention. He wasn't just cooking burgers, he was performing. Every flip of the spatula came with another story about how successful he was. Every joke ended with people laughing louder than it deserved. Every conversation somehow returned to his newest business achievement. "If you want to be successful," he said loudly while flipping another burger, "you have to think bigger than everyone else." Our father nodded proudly. "That's exactly why you've opened 3 auto repair shops in only a few years." Marcus smiled as though he expected applause. His wife Jennifer stood nearby filming him for social media. "Smile, honey," she laughed. People love seeing successful family men. Their twin sons raced through the backyard wearing designer sneakers that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Nobody stopped them from trampling the flowers. Nobody ever did. In this family, Marcus's children could do no wrong. I stood quietly beneath a patio umbrella with Daniel beside me. He gently held my hand while watching the burgers cook. He had been unusually quiet during the drive over. Family gatherings always made him nervous. Even though he was only 7, the children notice far more than adults think they do. He had already learned that some relatives treated us differently. Not because we were rude. Not because we had done anything wrong. Simply because we weren't rich. "Mom." I looked down. Daniel rubbed his stomach before looking at me with those gentle brown eyes that reminded me so much of his father. "I'm really hungry." His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "Can I have one of the burgers?" I smiled and brushed his messy brown hair away from his forehead. "Of course, sweetheart." I squeezed his hand. "Let's go ask Uncle Marcus." We slowly walked across the patio. Marcus was still talking. "The 3rd shop is already making money," he boasted. "Most people fail because they think too small." Dad laughed. "I always knew you'd become the successful one." I pretended not to notice the familiar sting in my chest. The successful one. The implication was obvious. If Marcus was the successful child, then I was the disappointment. Daniel waited politely until Marcus finally stopped talking. "Uncle Marcus." Marcus slowly turned around. "What is it, buddy?" Daniel smiled nervously. "Could I please have one of the burgers?" For a brief second, everything was normal. Then Marcus looked at me. His smile disappeared. His eyes traveled over my faded jeans, my inexpensive sandals, and the old handbag hanging from my shoulder. The same expression I'd seen hundreds of times spread across his face. Pity, disgust, superiority. He raised his voice just enough so everyone nearby could hear. "These burgers." He laughed. "They're only for kids with a future." Silence. The entire backyard froze. Even the children stopped running. Marcus pointed casually toward Daniel without even looking directly at him. "Food like this is for families who actually invest in their children's future." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. I slowly looked around the yard. My father stared at the ground. My mother suddenly became very interested in stirring the potato salad. Jennifer laughed softly. Not because the joke was funny, because embarrassing people always entertained her. Across the patio, my cousin Trevor frowned. He looked uncomfortable. For a moment I thought he might say something. Instead, he quietly walked away. Then Aunt Patricia broke the silence. "Marcus isn't completely wrong, Clara." She adjusted her sunglasses before continuing. "You really should think more seriously about Daniel's future." I didn't answer. She kept going. "A child needs stability, a proper home, better opportunities." Uncle Robert joined in. "You know," he said while sipping his drink, "real estate is a great investment these days. If you had planned your finances better over the years." I stopped listening. I'd heard variations of this speech for years. They assumed I was barely surviving. They believed my small apartment meant failure. They believed my old car meant poverty. None of them had ever asked what I actually did for a living. They simply decided they already knew. Marcus flipped another burger onto a tray. Some people, he announced dramatically, just aren't built for success. Several relatives nodded. It takes vision. Another burger. It takes sacrifice. Another flip. It takes real entrepreneurs. Daniel's tiny fingers tightened around mine. I looked down. His eyes were full of tears he was trying desperately to hide. Mom. His voice trembled. Did I do something wrong? My heart shattered. Children should never have to ask that question. Especially not because of family. I knelt beside him. No, sweetheart. But Uncle Marcus, you didn't do anything wrong. His lower lip quivered. I was just hungry. I swallowed the lump in my throat. So was I. For one long moment, I looked directly into Marcus's eyes. He expected me to argue. He wanted a scene. He wanted everyone to watch him win. Instead, I smiled. A calm, quiet smile. I understand. I gently took the empty paper plate from Daniel's hands and placed it on the nearby table. Then I stood. Come on, sweetheart. He looked confused. We're leaving. Was. His voice cracked. I'm still hungry. I placed my arm around his shoulders. I know. I smiled warmly. And I'm gonna buy you the best burger you've ever tasted. Without another word, we turned toward the gate. Behind us, nobody stopped us. Nobody apologized. Nobody called Marcus out for humiliating a 7-year-old child. As we reached the driveway, Marcus couldn't resist taking one final shot. He laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. Don't forget next week's family investment meeting. A few relatives chuckled. Then Marcus added, oh, never mind? He grinned. That's only for people who actually contribute. More laughter. I never looked back. Daniel quietly climbed into our old sedan. I started the engine. For several minutes we drove without saying a word. The silence inside the car felt heavier than the summer heat outside. Finally, a tiny voice broke it. Mom. Yes. Does Uncle Marcus hate me? The question hit harder than any insult Marcus had ever thrown at me. I pulled into an empty parking lot and turned off the engine. Then I turned toward my son. No. Then why wouldn't he give me a burger? I reached over and gently wiped away the tear rolling down his cheek. Sometimes people become so proud of what they have. I paused. That they forget how to be kind. Daniel stared out the window. Are we poor? I smiled softly. We're comfortable. But everyone says we aren't. I laughed quietly. People don't always know the truth. He thought about that. Then he asked the question that changed everything. So, what do you really do at work? I looked at my son. For years I had kept my professional life hidden from almost everyone. Even Daniel only knew that mommy worked on computers and talked to important people on video calls after bedtime. One day, I would tell him everything. But not yet, I smiled. I help businesses make smart financial decisions. Is that important? It can be. He nodded as though that answered everything. Children have an incredible ability to accept simple answers. I started the car again. 10 minutes later we pulled into a small roadside diner with a glowing red sign that read, Daniel climbed out of the car. The sadness on his face slowly disappeared as the smell of fresh burgers drifted through the air. He smiled again, and seeing that smile reminded me exactly why I had spent the last 5 years working harder than anyone could possibly imagine. Not for revenge, not for recognition, not for wealth. For him, I had promised myself that my son would never have to depend on anyone else's kindness. What I didn't know was that before the night was over, my brother would accidentally remind me of a secret he should have never brought up. And once he did, there would be no turning back. The waitress welcomed us with the kind of smile that couldn't be faked. Table for two. I nodded. Just the two of us. She led us to a quiet booth near the window while soft country music played through the old speakers. The diner wasn't fancy, but it felt warm, comfortable, peaceful. Exactly what we needed. Daniel picked up the menu, although I already knew what he wanted. Can I get the double cheeseburger? He asked hopefully. With extra fries? I smiled. You can get whatever you'd like. His eyes lit up. And a chocolate milkshake. Absolutely. For the first time that afternoon, he looked like a happy 7-year-old again instead of a little boy wondering why his own family had rejected him. As the waitress walked away, Daniel looked at me. Yes. I think this place is nicer than Grandpa's house. I laughed softly. Why? Because people here are nice. Those simple words hit me harder than Marcus's cruel joke ever could. Children don't remember expensive decorations. They remember how people make them feel. 20 minutes later, the waitress placed a huge cheeseburger in front of Daniel. His eyes became as wide as the plate. Whoa. He looked at me before taking the first bite. "This is the best burger I've ever had." I watched him eat with the biggest smile on my face. Not because of the food, because the sadness was disappearing from his eyes. "Mom. I don't even want Uncle Marcus's burger anymore." I reached across the table and squeezed his little hand. "I'm glad. Because this one tastes like kindness." I had to look away for a second before tears formed in my own eyes. Children have a way of describing the truth better than adults ever can. After dinner we stopped for ice cream before heading home. By the time we reached our apartment, Daniel had almost forgotten what happened. Almost. After helping him brush his teeth and reading 2 chapters from his favorite adventure book, I tucked him into bed. He hugged me tightly. "I love you. I love you more. You always make everything better." I kissed his forehead. "I'll always try." Within minutes he was asleep. I quietly closed his bedroom door halfway before walking into the living room. Anyone visiting my apartment for the first time would probably think Marcus had been right about me. The furniture wasn't expensive. The television was several years old. The walls were simple. No luxury artwork. No designer decorations. Nothing impressive. What people never noticed was the room in the corner. My office. Inside that office sat 3 computer monitors, encrypted servers, financial reports worth millions of dollars, and confidential documents belonging to companies all over the world. This tiny apartment wasn't a sign of failure. It was camouflage. I preferred people to underestimate me. It made business negotiations much easier. I changed into comfortable clothes, brewed a cup of Earl Grey tea, and sat down at my desk. The digital clock read 11:05 p.m., right on schedule. A reminder appeared on my calendar. Quarterly banking review, midnight deadline. I reached for my laptop. Before I could log in, my phone vibrated. Marcus, of course. I already knew this wasn't going to be an apology. I opened the message. "You embarrassed me today by walking out like that." I kept reading. Remember who guaranteed your business loan 5 years ago. Remember who believed in you when nobody else did. Without me, you'd never have started your little consulting business. You owe me respect. Never forget your place." I stared at the screen for several seconds. Then, I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because Marcus had just reminded me of the biggest mistake he had ever made. 5 years earlier, I had gone to him asking for help. Not because I wanted charity. Because the commercial bank required someone to guarantee my startup loan. I still remembered walking into Marcus's office carrying a carefully prepared business plan. He hadn't even opened it. Instead, he leaned back in his expensive chair and laughed. "You." He shook his head. "A financial consultant." He actually wiped tears from his eyes. "Clara, you barely finished college." "I graduated." "Barely." He grinned. "Who's going to trust their money with a struggling single mother?" I quietly listened. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Will you sign as guarantor?" He stood and slowly walked around his office. Hope filled my heart, until he continued. "But first," he smiled, "I want you to admit that I was right." I frowned. "About what?" "About everything." He folded his arms. "Tell me you're not as smart as me." Silence. "Tell me you'll never be as successful as me." I still said nothing. "And tell me," his smile grew wider, "that you need your big brother to rescue you." Every word hurt. But I needed that signature, not because the business depended on Marcus, because the bank required collateral I didn't have. So, I swallowed my pride. I said the words he wanted to hear, and he loved every second of it. For years afterward, he reminded me, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday. "Remember who made your career possible. You'd have nothing without me. I should have charged you interest." He truly believed he had created my success. What Marcus never understood was that he had simply opened a tiny door. I was the one who built the entire building afterward. Exactly 1 year after launching my consulting firm, I paid that loan off completely, early, in full, with interest. The bank sent confirmation. The debt disappeared forever, but I never told Marcus. Why? Because he enjoyed believing I still owed him. And sometimes, the easiest way to defeat an arrogant person is to let them keep underestimating you. I placed my tea on the desk. Then I opened my encrypted laptop. The login screen disappeared. Several secure dashboards appeared. Investment portfolios, corporate acquisitions, international holdings, private equity reports. My eyes settled on one specific folder, a First National Holdings. A slow smile spread across my face. Marcus thought he had helped build my future. The truth, his entire business empire now depended on decisions made inside this folder. He simply didn't know it yet. I clicked the folder open. The hundreds of confidential files appeared. Ownership agreements, corporate structures, commercial mortgages, loan portfolios, bank acquisitions. Every document had one thing in common. At the bottom, my signature. As Clara Thompson as managing director. I leaned back in my chair. 5 years. 5 years of 14-hour workdays. 5 years of sleeping only a few hours every night. 5 years of raising Daniel while building an international consulting firm. Every sacrifice, every lonely night, every business trip, every difficult decision had led to this moment. Suddenly, a new notification appeared on my monitor. Commercial account alert. I opened it. The account number looked familiar. Very familiar. I checked the client name. Marcus Thompson Automotive Group. Payment overdue. 3 days late. I slowly read the rest of the report. Commercial mortgage. Default warning. Grace period expires midnight. I looked at the clock. 11:59 p.m. 1 minute remained. 1 single minute. I didn't create the rules, I simply enforced them. The digital clock changed. 1200 a.m. The grace period expired. Another notification appeared. ACCOTNOINDFALT. I quietly closed my eyes. Then I whispered 4 words. You chose this, Marcus. I opened a new email. My fingers rested above the keyboard. For years, Marcus believed I owed him everything. Tonight, he was about to discover who actually held the power. And once I pressed send, neither of our lives would ever be the same again. The blinking cursor waited patiently. So did I. For years, Marcus had reminded me that I owed my success to one signature. Tonight, I was finally going to remind him of something far more important. A contract. Unlike family pride, contracts don't care about feelings. They only care about facts. I opened a new email. Subject: regarding your commercial accounts. I kept the message short. Marcus, you reminded me tonight about the loan you guaranteed 5 years ago. I appreciate that reminder. I've attached several documents that I think you'll find interesting. Please review them carefully. Clara. Then I attached the first file. It was a legal ownership report. 14 months earlier, my investment company had quietly completed the acquisition of First National Bank. It hadn't made national headlines. That was intentional. The purchase was structured through several holding companies to protect the identities of our investors. To the outside world, nothing seemed different. The bank kept the same name, the same branches, the same employees, the same logo. But behind the scenes, everything had changed, and one of the bank's biggest commercial borrowers was Marcus. I attached a second document, his commercial loan summary, 3 auto repair shops, multiple business loans, cross-collateral agreements, every property connected to the others. It was a structure that worked beautifully, as long as payments stayed current. I attached one final document, the official notice of default. 3 days late, grace period expired, standard banking procedure activated. I read the email one last time, then I pressed send. For several seconds, nothing happened. The apartment remained perfectly quiet. Then my phone exploded. Marcus, calling. I ignored it. A second later, Jennifer. Ignored. Then my mother. Then my father. Then Marcus again. 5 calls in less than 2 minutes. I calmly silenced the phone. Instead of answering, I opened another email. This one was addressed to John Davies, the senior commercial loan officer at First National. As of John, please proceed with standard default procedures for the commercial accounts belonging to Marcus Thompson Automotive Group. The grace period has officially expired. As no exceptions. Treat this borrower exactly as you would any other client. Thank you. I pressed send. No anger, no insults. Just business. I closed my laptop, walked into the kitchen, refilled my tea, then returned to my desk. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a text from Marcus. Answer your phone on W's. Another message. This isn't funny, Kex. Another. Tell me those documents are fake. Yay. I smiled. For years, Marcus had enjoyed making me wait outside his office. Tonight, he could wait. 3 minutes later, the phone rang again. Finally, I answered. Hello. Marcus didn't even say hello. What the hell is wrong with you? His voice echoed through the speaker. Did you forge those documents? No. You don't own First National. I do. Impossible. His breathing became heavier. You're not. My lawyer will prove those papers are fake. They're public corporate records. Silence. Then no. His confidence cracked for the first time. No, this can't be happening. It already happened. When? 14 months ago. You bought a bank. My investment group did. Marcus laughed nervously. It sounded forced. This is some ridiculous joke. Call the bank tomorrow morning. Silence again. Then, wait. His voice became smaller. My business loans, my mortgages, yes, they're owned by the institution I manage. For several seconds, I heard nothing except his breathing. Finally, you planned this. No, I don't believe you. I didn't buy a bank because of you, Marcus. I leaned back in my chair. You simply happened to borrow money from one. His breathing became faster. You can't enforce this. I already have. You wouldn't. You can't treat family this way. I closed my eyes. Family. I repeated the word quietly. Were we family this afternoon? Marcus didn't answer. Were we family when my 7-year-old son asked for food? Silence. Were we family when you humiliated him in front of everyone? Still nothing. Were we family while everyone stood there pretending they couldn't hear him asking for a hamburger? Marcus finally spoke. It was just a joke. No.
I wasn't. It was.
It was public humiliation. It wasn't that serious. It was serious to Daniel. Another long silence. Then Marcus tried something different. His voice softened. I might have gone too far. Might have. I'll apologize? No. What do you mean no? I don't want a forced apology. I'll say whatever you want. I don't want words. What do you want then? I looked out the apartment window. The city lights sparkled beneath the summer sky. I want you to honor your contracts. His breathing stopped. You've got 72 hours. For what? To cure your default. Clara, you owe $12,800, including penalties. I don't have that much cash available. That's unfortunate. My money is invested. So is mine. You know business doesn't work like this. It actually does. Please? It was the first time in my life I had ever heard Marcus beg. Usually late. The old manager never cared. I'm not the old manager. You can waive the fees. I could. Then do it. I won't. His voice cracked. Why? I answered without hesitation. Because today you taught my son that kindness depends on money. And tonight, I decided to teach you that contracts don't. The room became completely silent. Then another voice suddenly interrupted. It was my father. Clara. He had been listening the entire time. Sweetheart. His voice sounded tired. Can't we settle this as a family? I closed my eyes. Dad, Marcus made a mistake. You watched him. You stood 5 feet away. I didn't know what to say. You could have said one sentence. Silence. You could have told your grandson he deserved a meal. Nothing. You said nothing. My father's voice became quiet. I know. No. You know now. I should have stopped him. Less. I'm sorry. I appreciate hearing that. Then help your brother. I'm helping him. Cole. Absolutely. How? I'm teaching him accountability. Another voice entered the conversation. She was crying. Clara, please. It was only one barbecue. Ma. What? 7 years of watching people judge my son. You know we love Daniel. I know you do. But love without action doesn't protect children. She began crying harder. Why never meant to hurt him? But you did. Jennifer suddenly grabbed the phone. You've lost your mind. She shouted so loudly I had to move the phone away from my ear. You think you're powerful because you bought a little bank. It's not little? You can't threaten us? I'm not threatening anyone. You'll regret this. I don't think so. My followers will destroy your reputation. I almost laughed. Jennifer. I advise you not to post anything. You can't tell me what to do. You'd be discussing confidential banking matters involving an active commercial client. Silence. Your lawyer can explain why that's a terrible idea. Jennifer stopped talking. A moment later, Marcus took the phone back. His voice sounded completely different. The confidence was gone. The arrogance had disappeared. Only fear remained. Clara. Yes. What happens if I can't pay? I answered honestly. The same thing that happens to every other borrower. And what's that? The bank protects its investment. He whispered one final question. You're really going to treat me like everyone else? I took a slow breath. Then I gave him the answer he never expected. No. He sounded relieved. I've already treated you better than everyone else. What? I overlooked late payments for 14 months. Silence. That courtesy ended tonight. I ended the call. Immediately afterward, I blocked every family member's number, one by one. The apartment became quiet again. For the first time all evening, I felt completely at peace. I walked toward my bedroom, ready to finally get some sleep. But before I reached the hallway, 3 loud knocks echoed through my apartment. Ak knock a sex guy knock. As I looked at the clock, 1:17 a.m. Nobody visited me at 1 in the morning, especially not without calling first. I slowly walked toward the front door, looked through the peephole, and saw a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit holding an expensive leather briefcase. I had never seen him before, but somehow, I already knew exactly who he was. Marcus hadn't wasted a single minute. He had sent his lawyer. And something told me, this conversation was about to change everything once again. The man waited patiently outside my apartment door. He wasn't pounding on the door. He wasn't shouting. He simply stood there with one hand holding a leather briefcase, while the other rested calmly at his side. I unlocked the deadbolt but left the security chain in place before opening the door just a few inches. Can I help you? The man offered a professional smile. Good evening, Miss Thompson. My name is David Park. He reached into his jacket and slowly produced a business card. I'm senior legal counsel for Marcus Thompson Automotive Group. I wasn't surprised. Marcus had always believed that money could solve every problem. If money didn't work, he hired lawyers. I glanced at the business card before handing it back. It's nearly 1:30 in the morning. I apologize for the late visit. No, you don't. For the first time, his smile weakened. I'd appreciate just a few minutes of your time. I doubt that. He took a slow breath. My client is extremely distressed. I imagine he is. Convinced this entire situation is the result of a misunderstanding. No. Oh, it's the result of several signed contracts. Park studied my face carefully. I understand emotions are running high after today's family gathering. I folded my arms. This has nothing to do with emotions. It certainly appears personal. It isn't. He tilted his head. You own the bank. Correct. Your brother borrowed from that bank. Correct. And immediately after an argument, his loans entered default. They entered default because he failed to make his payment. That's one interpretation. No. It's the only interpretation. For several seconds he remained silent. Then he opened his briefcase and removed several documents. We're prepared to seek an emergency injunction first thing tomorrow morning. I almost smiled. On what grounds? Conflict of interest. Interesting. You have personal history with the borrower. I do. You also have authority over his loans. I do. Therefore, I gently interrupted him. You've misunderstood something. His eyebrows lifted. What exactly? I don't personally approve or deny commercial loans. He looked confused. The bank has procedures. The loan department follows written policy. The compliance department reviews every action. The legal department verifies everything. I looked directly into his eyes. My brother isn't dealing with Clara. He's dealing with First National Bank. Mr. Park's confident expression faded. I still believe the court will question your motives. The court can question anything it wants. I shrugged. The contracts answer much better than I do. He slowly closed his briefcase. You've prepared for this. I prepare for everything. I can see that. Then he asked the question I knew had been bothering him. Why buy a regional bank? I smiled. Because most people chase flashy investments. I prefer boring businesses. Boring. People always need banks. They always need financing. They always need mortgages. The boring investments usually become the most profitable. He nodded slowly. I have to admit, I underestimated you. You weren't the only one. He gave a respectful nod. I'll advise my client accordingly. Please do. And one more thing. Yes. If Marcus pays everything tomorrow morning, his account returns to current status. And if he doesn't, then standard procedures continue. No special treatment. None? He looked disappointed. I was hoping you'd leave me some room to negotiate. I smiled politely. Then you're representing the wrong client. With that, I closed the door. The apartment became quiet once again. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, not because I was nervous, because I had a routine: exercise, coffee, breakfast with Daniel, school drop-off, business. Nothing about Marcus was going to interrupt my life. By 7:30, chocolate chip pancakes were already on the table. Daniel walked into the kitchen rubbing his sleepy eyes. Morning. Good morning. He sat down before smiling. My favorite. You earned them. He took a bite before looking at me carefully. You seem happier today. I do. He nodded. You smiled before I even said good morning. I laughed. Maybe I slept well. He shook his head. No. You look. He searched for the right word. Lighter. Children noticed everything. I think you're right. He smiled. I'm glad. So am I. After dropping him off at school, I drove downtown. Unlike Marcus's offices, mine didn't have my name displayed across the building. That was intentional. Privacy had value. The elevator carried me to the 21st floor. The receptionist immediately stood. Good morning, Miss Thompson. Morning, Lisa. The board meeting begins at 1. I'll be ready. As I walked through the office, employees greeted me respectfully. Nobody cared what designer clothes I wore. Nobody judged my car. The only thing that mattered here was results. Inside my office, I looked through the floor to ceiling windows overlooking Chicago. Millions of people were beginning another workday. Some were opening restaurants. Some were building houses. Some were starting businesses. Everyone believed their financial future depended on their own decisions. Most of the time, they were right. My phone rang. John Davies. Good morning, John. Morning, Miss Thompson. I have an update. I'm listening. Marcus Thompson wired the full payment. I wasn't surprised. When? 9:45 this morning, so he made the deadline. Less. He also paid every penalty fee. Excellent. John hesitated. His attorney requested confirmation. Send it. And update his account. Current status, correct. Another short pause. Would you like us to continue monitoring his accounts? I smiled. Like every other commercial borrower, no more, no less. Exactly, understood. After hanging up, I stared out the window. Marcus had found the money. Maybe he borrowed it. Maybe he sold equipment. Maybe Dad emptied his retirement account. It didn't matter. For the first time in his professional life, Marcus had learned that deadlines applied to him too. A few minutes later, another message arrived. This one wasn't from Marcus. It was from my father. Your mother cried all night. I continued reading. She says she doesn't recognize the daughter she raised anymore. So I quietly placed the phone on my desk for several minutes. I simply looked at the city below. Then I picked it up again and replied, See dash. This isn't a new version of me. Doc Sav, I've been this person for 5 years. Is something you never asked who I became after the divorce. You only assumed I was failing because I stopped talking about my work. The difference isn't me. The difference is that now you finally know the truth. I pressed send. There was nothing else to add. That chapter should have ended there. Marcus had paid. The bank had been made whole. Justice had quietly been served. I truly believed life would finally return to normal. I couldn't have been more wrong. Late that afternoon, while reviewing quarterly investment reports, my assistant knocked softly on the office door. The Thompson. A courier just delivered this. She placed a large certified envelope on my desk. No return address. There is. She pointed toward the upper left corner. David Park and Associates, Marcus's law firm. I frowned. Thank you, Lisa. After she left, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of legal papers. At first, I assumed Marcus was suing the bank. Maybe wrongful foreclosure. Maybe harassment. Maybe some desperate legal strategy. But as I read the title on the first page, every bit of warmth disappeared from my body. Adjar Fargiapran Visitera and Rajt Sus filed jointly by my own parents. My hands slowly tightened around the documents. I continued reading. The petition claimed my recent behavior proved I was emotionally unstable. It questioned my judgment. It questioned my parenting. And worst of all, it asked the court to grant my parents unsupervised access to Daniel. Not because they loved him. Because they wanted leverage over me. I slowly lowered the papers onto my desk. Then I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in years, I felt something colder than anger. Disappointment. My brother had attacked me. I expected that. But my own parents were willing to drag my son into their revenge. They hadn't learned anything. Not yet. I looked out across the Chicago skyline one more time. Then I quietly whispered to myself, You should have stopped after the barbecue. Because now, this wasn't about business anymore. This had become a war over my child. And anyone willing to use my son as a weapon was about to discover exactly how far a mother would go to protect her family. I didn't panic, I didn't cry, and I certainly didn't call my parents. Instead, I closed the file, locked my office door, and took a long, slow breath. After years in the financial world, I had learned one lesson that applied to every crisis. Never react emotionally. React strategically. I picked up my phone and called the one person I trusted without question. My name is Sarah Mitchell. Sarah wasn't just an attorney. She was one of the best family law specialists in Illinois, and she had represented CEOs, judges, and public officials through some of the most complicated custody cases in the state. She answered on the second ring. Clara. I need you. Her voice immediately became serious. What happened? My parents just filed for grandparent visitation. There was a brief silence. They're claiming I'm emotionally unstable after a family dispute. And Daniel. They want unsupervised access. Sarah sighed. I already have. You already. I sent the documents 30 seconds before I called. She laughed quietly. Sometimes I forget how prepared you are. I learned from the best. I'll call you back in an hour. Exactly 54 minutes later, my phone rang again. I've finished reading everything. Sarah didn't hesitate. It's weak? How weak? Embarrassingly weak. I smiled for the first time that afternoon. The petition is based almost entirely on opinions. No evidence. Very little. What about their claim that I'm unstable? They're using your enforcement of Marcus's commercial loan as proof. I couldn't help laughing. So according to them, I'm an unfit mother because I followed banking regulations. Exactly. Sarah laughed too. I've seen ridiculous cases before. This one might be the winner.
So what happens now? I respond. Only respond.
No. Her tone became firm. We counterattack. Over the next 3 days, Sarah and I built our case. With evidence, school attendance records, perfect. Daniel's medical history, perfect. Teacher evaluations, excellent. Letters from neighbors, positive photos, videos, receipts. Every document showed the same thing. Daniel lived a happy, healthy, stable life. Meanwhile, Sarah asked me a question I hadn't expected. Tell me everything about the barbecue. I told her every detail. Daniel asking for food, Marcus refusing, the family staying silent, everything. When I finished, Sarah slowly closed her notebook. Did anyone witness this? Trevor, the cousin. Will he testify? I don't know, I'll ask. That evening I called Trevor. He answered immediately. Hey, Clara, I need a favor. If this is about the barbecue, it is. He interrupted me. I've been waiting for your call. I should have spoken up. You walked away. I know. His voice carried genuine regret. I've hated myself ever since. I need the truth. You'll have it? No matter what, no matter who gets angry. For the first time since receiving the lawsuit, I felt hope. Till a week later, the hearing arrived. The courtroom wasn't crowded, just the judge, several attorneys, my parents, Marcus, Jennifer, Trevor, and me. Daniel wasn't there. I refused to let my son experience another day of adults behaving badly. The judge reviewed the petition, then looked toward my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, what evidence do you have that your daughter is an unfit parent? My mother looked toward Marcus before speaking. She's changed. The judge waited. How? She's become cold. Still waiting. Anything else? My father cleared his throat. She threatened our son financially. Sarah immediately stood. Objection. The commercial loan documents clearly show the borrower was already in default before my client took any action. The judge nodded. Sustained. Sarah calmly approached the bench with several folders. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce the payment history. The judge spent several minutes reviewing the documents, then looked at Marcus. Mr. Thompson, were you late on your payments? Marcus swallowed. Yes. Were the bank's actions legal? And another pause. Yes. Then what exactly is your complaint? Marcus couldn't answer. The courtroom became completely silent. Sarah smiled politely. Your Honor, would also like to introduce testimony regarding the family gathering that began this dispute. Trevor walked to the witness stand. He took the oath, then looked directly at the judge. I witnessed everything. What happened? He took a deep breath. A 7-year-old boy politely asked for a hamburger, and Marcus publicly humiliated him. Were those your exact observations? Yes. What did everyone else do? Trevor lowered his head. The courtroom felt heavier. Sarah continued. No. Did Daniel deserve what happened? Absolutely not. What did Clara do afterward?
She quietly left.
No yelling? No threats? No violence. Just protected her son. Wes. Sarah returned to our table. My client removed her child from a toxic environment. That's what good parents do. The judge slowly nodded. Then he turned toward my parents. Is any of this testimony inaccurate? Neither of them answered. Finally, my father quietly spoke.
No.
My mother began crying. We made a terrible mistake. The judge folded the petition closed. This court finds absolutely no evidence that Miss Thompson is an unfit parent. He paused. In fact, the evidence suggests precisely the opposite. He looked directly at my parents. A parent who calmly removes her child from public humiliation demonstrates sound judgment. He signed the dismissal order. This petition is denied. Just like that. It was over. He outside the courthouse. My parents waited beside the front steps. Marcus and Jennifer left without saying a word. For once, there were no cameras, no speeches, no arrogance, only silence. My father slowly walked toward me. I'm sorry. I looked into his eyes. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. No? He shook his head. You don't understand. I failed you. You needed me years ago. I wasn't there. I failed Daniel. I didn't protect my grandson. His voice broke. And today, the judge showed me exactly what kind of father I became. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I answered. You can't change what happened. I know. But you can decide who you become next. Tears rolled down my mother's face. We've already withdrawn every other legal filing. I know. We're so ashamed. I believed them. Not because of their words. Because this was the first conversation they'd ever had without blaming someone else. As they slowly walked away, Sarah stepped beside me. You okay? I smiled. I think so. You won. I looked toward the courthouse behind us. No. We protected Daniel. That's what matters. Sarah nodded. You're right. As I drove home that afternoon, my phone rang. Good afternoon, Miss Thompson. Hello. John. I thought you'd like to know. What happened? Marcus requested to refinance all 3 businesses. And? He was declined. Why? Risk assessment. I looked out the windshield. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years Marcus had judged people by appearances. Today, the numbers judged him. And numbers never cared about pride. A month passed after the courthouse hearing. Life slowly settled into a rhythm again. Every morning I made breakfast with Daniel before taking him to school. Every afternoon, I managed investment meetings, reviewed acquisition proposals, and helped businesses solve problems worth millions of dollars. Every evening, I came home to the little apartment everyone had once laughed at. Ironically, I loved it more than ever, because inside these simple walls, there was peace. One Friday afternoon, Daniel burst through the front door holding an envelope. "Mum!" He could barely contain his excitement. "I won." I laughed. "What did you win?" He proudly handed me the paper. It was a certificate from his school, a student of the month, not because of grades, not because of sports, because of kindness. I looked down at my son. "I'm so proud of you." He smiled. "My teacher said I always help other kids." I knelt in front of him. "Do you know something?" "What?" "That's worth more than any amount of money." He hugged me tightly. "I learned that from you." For a moment, everything else disappeared. The bank, the lawsuits, the family drama. None of it mattered. This was why I had worked so hard. Not to become powerful, but to make sure my son could grow into a good man. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Her number was no longer blocked. I answered. "Hello, hi, Clara." Her voice sounded nervous. "I know I don't deserve another chance." I stayed quiet. "But your father and I were wondering." She hesitated. "Would it be all right if we took Daniel to the park for a few hours? Not alone. Not secretly." She asked respectfully. I appreciated that. "I'll come too, of course." No arguments? No pressure? No, then yes. Saturday afternoon, we met at a public park. Daniel ran toward his grandparents with the same innocent excitement children always have. Kids forgive much faster than adults. My father bent down and hugged him. "We missed you, buddy." "I missed you too." The grandpa. Watching them together, I realized something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means allowing people the opportunity to become better than they were yesterday. Over the next several weeks, things slowly changed. My parents stopped asking about money. They stopped comparing me to Marcus. They stopped treating success as though it could only be measured by expensive houses or luxury cars. Instead, they asked about Daniel's school, his favorite books, his dreams. For the first time in years, we actually talked like a family. To Marcus, that was different. Nearly 3 months passed before we saw each other again. It happened during Thanksgiving, just as I had expected. The atmosphere was awkward. Nobody boasted. Nobody compared salaries. Nobody asked about investments. Marcus looked different, less confident, more thoughtful. His businesses were still operating, but much more carefully than before. The experience with the bank had changed him. Dinner passed quietly. Then dessert arrived, chocolate cake. Daniel looked across the table. "Uncle Marcus." Marcus immediately looked up. "Yeah, buddy? Can I please have a piece of cake?" The room became completely silent. Everyone remembered. Everyone waited. Marcus slowly stood. Without saying a word, he cut the largest slice on the tray. Then he walked all the way around the table and personally placed it in front of Daniel. "This one's for you." A Daniel smiled. "Thank you." A Marcus looked at me. "I owe him more than cake." I nodded. "Lass. I know." He took a deep breath. "I'm sought to me, to Daniel. I was cruel. I wanted everyone to laugh. I forgot you were just a little boy." Daniel looked confused. "It's okay. Children have amazing hearts." Marcus smiled sadly. "No, it wasn't." Then he looked at me. "I spent years believing money made me important." He laughed quietly. "But losing control for just one night taught me something." "What's that?" "The richest person in the family." He looked around the room. "Was never the one with the biggest house." He pointed gently toward me. "It was the one nobody bothered to understand. Nobody argued. Nobody needed to." The silence itself was an apology. Several months later, I stood in front of the large windows inside my office. Chicago stretched endlessly below me. My assistant entered. "Your next client is here." "Who is it?" She smiled. I laughed. "Send him in." Trevor walked inside carrying a thick folder. "Looks like your consulting firm is becoming impossible to book." "I've been busy." "I have another acquisition opportunity." He placed the folder on my desk. "It's worth nearly $200 million. I smiled. "Let's take a look." Business continued. Life continued. But something inside me had changed forever. I no longer felt the need to prove myself. The people who mattered already knew the truth. And those who didn't never really mattered in the first place. 2. That evening, after putting Daniel to bed, I walked onto the apartment balcony. The city lights sparkled beneath the night sky. Daniel's words from the diner echoed in my mind. "This burger tastes like kindness." I smiled. Marcus thought he had taught my son about failure. Instead, he accidentally reminded me why kindness will always be worth more than pride. Money can buy houses. Money can buy businesses. Money can even buy banks. But it can never buy character. Character is earned, one decision at a time, One act of kindness at a time, one promise kept at a time. As I looked across the city, I realized I had achieved something far more valuable than financial success. I had built a future where my son would never question his worth because of someone else's opinion. No one would ever again tell him he didn't have a future. Because his future had never depended on their approval. It depended on love, hard work, and a mother who refused to let anyone define her child. Sometimes justice isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. Sometimes justice is simply showing them they were wrong all along. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one holding the strongest hand. They simply wait for the perfect moment before revealing it. That family barbecue changed all of our lives. Marcus lost his arrogance. My parents rediscovered what truly mattered. The Daniel learned that kindness is stronger than pride. And I finally stopped hiding who I really was. That was the greatest victory of all. Pie Free Story Summary. Clara Thompson, a successful but humble financial consultant, hides her true wealth while raising her young son, Daniel. During a family barbecue, her arrogant brother Marcus humiliates Daniel by refusing him a hamburger, claiming it is only for kids with a future. Quietly leaving without causing a scene, Clara later reveals that she secretly owns the bank financing Marcus's businesses. When Marcus defaults on his commercial loans, she enforces the same banking rules that apply to every customer, teaching him that contracts and consequences don't care about arrogance. After Marcus and Clara's parents try to pressure her through legal action involving Daniel, Clara protects her son, wins in court, and ultimately earns the respect her family had denied her for years. In the end, justice is served, relationships begin to heal, and Daniel grows up knowing that his future is built on love, integrity, and perseverance, not on the opinions of others. Upon fate, what we can learn from this story: never judge someone's success by their appearance. A kindness is more valuable than money or status. A true strength is staying calm while others try to humiliate you. Parents should always protect their children with courage and wisdom. Respect is earned through character, not wealth. Success speaks louder than boasting. The greatest revenge is living well and letting the truth reveal itself. Thank you so much for listening to this story from beginning to end. If this story touched your heart or kept you on the edge of your seat, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next emotional story. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you would have done if you were in Clara's situation. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay kind, and remember never underestimate the quiet person in the room. They may already be building a future no one else can imagine.